Hello everyone, this is Ben, and welcome to another installment of Shower Thoughts, the budget commander series that proves Magic isn't pay to win. We're about halfway through the year, so I figured I'd do a mid-year update on my top 10 commanders of 2023, and keycards I'd include to build budget decks for any of them. I will only be talking about commanders I've either played with or against, so if you don't see your favorite new commander here, that's probably why. After all, there have been 224 new commanders printed this year, and it's only July. If you can give this video a like, it'll really help out the channel. And a special thanks to my patrons shown on screen here. If you'd like to join them in supporting the channel, you can find my Patreon link down below. Without further ado, let's get into it. Number 10 on my list is Yargle and Multani. Yargle isn't on the list just because it's Yargle, that would be cheating. I played against this deck during a Commander F&M at my local game store a few weeks ago and loved it. It was a Golgari Fling deck where they used cards like Gerard, Golgari Lichlord, and Essence Harvest to deal massive damage to everyone at the cost of their commander. Then they loaded up on reanimation spells like Reanimate, Animate Dead, and Necromancy. Along with Pseudo Reanimation, with Kaya's Ghost Form, Malakir Rebirth, and Feign Death. It might not be a deck I want to play against every game night, but it is fun to see pop off every so often, which is why it's at the number 10 slot. Some key budget cards to include would be Gerard Golgari Lichlord, Disciple of Bolas, Kaya's Ghost Form, Return of the Wild Speaker, and Essence Harvest. Coming in at number 9 is Vishgraz the Doomhive. Poison is one of the most talked about mechanics in Commander because of how few counters it takes to knock someone out. Yes, Poison is strong, but I think people have an irrational fear of it, and Vishgraz helped my playgroup overcome that fear. They don't want everyone to get to 10 Poison counters, but they want to keep them right on the cusp to get as strong as possible. This, in conjunction with the corrupted mechanic from Phyrexia All-Be-One, means you don't necessarily want to knock the first person out you give poison to. Thankfully, they are 5 mana, so removing them a few times does make it way too expensive to recast. The reason it comes in at number 9 is because how often the deck becomes the arch enemy, thanks to how quickly it grows into a threat, and people's perception of poison counters. Some key budget cards to include would be Icarats, Evolution Sage, Infectious Inquiry, Swiftfoot Boots, and Tyvar Stand. Number 8 is Gimbal, Gremlin, Prodigy. If I was ranking cards on flavor text alone, Gimbal would be the top 3 easily. They're my favorite commander from the March of the Machine precons, thanks to its unique strategy. I love that I was able to go through my binders and boxes looking for any teamer cards that made unique artifact tokens. My Selvala, Togo, and Kimbo all found homes in this deck. And in my first game with this commander, I used an Echo Storm to copy a Loxodon Warhammer 3 times and smashed in with a giant Gremlin token. The reason for it coming in at number 8 is because of the board state this little Gremlin ends up making. Tracking a lot of a single token is hard enough, but when you have 7 or 8 different kinds, it can be a bit daunting. And the final thing that really grinds my gears with this is that Wizards only included 2 of the Gremlin tokens in the precon, even though you make one at the beginning of each of your end steps, and they come in with different counters. Some key budget cards to include would be Tago Goblin Weaponsmith, Svella Ice Shaper, Clowncar, Volo Inurit Scholar, and Sarnith Great Worm. Coming in at number 7 is Graaz Unstoppable Juggernaut. Some days you need to play a deck that takes the same amount of brainpower as playing mono green Tron in Modern. I'm not apologizing to you Tron players either. Graaz lets you take weak artifact creatures, such as Ornithopter or Memnite, and turns them into giant juggernauts. The biggest issue though I found with this deck is Graaz's mana cost. Having an 8 mana commander that is hyper dependent on mana rocks for ramp makes the deck very easy to disrupt. That's why I think cards like Shimmermere, Liberator Urza's Battlethopter, and Vidalcan Orrery are so important because they let you play Graaz as a combat trick from the command zone. And it's number 7 thanks to how easily the deck can be disrupted and the pretty linear playstyle. Some key budget cards to include would be Ornithopter, Shimmermere, Liberator Urza's Battlethopter, Semblance Anvil, and Orochi Hatchery. Coming in at number 6 is Aragorn the Uniter. Even though the Lord of the Rings set just came out, Aragorn, and my number 5 pick, have impressed me in a big way. 4 and 5 color decks often feel like good stuff decks, just filled with the best cards in the game. And while you could build Aragorn this way, you get more value by playing spells with as many colors as possible to get the most benefit from his ability. The Legends themed deck I played against included Chulane Teller of Tales, Catilda Dawnheart Prime, and Jetmir Nexus of Revels. The other idea I've heard is to build a deck with all of the charms in Aragorn's colors. The reason for Aragorn at number 6 is because of how new he is. It is possible in a few months we see more generic good stuff Aragorn decks, and I drop his rating. Some key budget cards to include would be General Ferris Rockrick, Hero of Precinct 1, Falagi Wayfarer, Trace of Abundance, and Broker's Charm. Coming in at number 5 is Éowyn Shieldmaiden. Éowyn quickly became one of my favorite decks of all time. The precon felt incredible out of the box, and she feels like the perfect commander for Jeskai humans. Her ability is everything I want in the command zone. It provides tokens to swing in with, and it's card draw. Of the recent precon face commanders, I think she's the best of the bunch. While Aragorn, King of Gondor, is a great commander in his own right, I think you need to build a deck around the Monarch in order to get the most out of his ability. While Éowyn just works with all the humans you want. If you have a friend who is new to Magic, this is the deck I'd recommend them pick up. She's only coming in at number 5 because she is so new. I want to play more games with her, but don't be surprised at the end of the year if you see her in the top 3. I have high hopes for this commander, and she is already a staple in my rotation. Some key budget cards to include would be Lawson Arc Captain, Riders of Rohan, Éowyn Fearless Knight, Increasing Devotion, and Horn of Gondor. Coming in at number 4 is Urtet, Remnant of Memnarch. I tend to have a bias against 5-colored decks, since I've mostly seen good stuff decks with Kenrith the Returned King, or near CDH combos with Najeela the Blade Blossom. But Urtet turned that bias on its head and quickly became my favorite 5-color commander of all time. I will admit, the friend who has this deck is a creative brewer and rarely builds deck the tables hate, so your experience may vary. His deck has ways to get multiple activations of Urtet's ability on a single turn, making his mere mana dorks into 7/7s or 10/10s seemingly out of nowhere, and Urtet is coming in at number 4 because of how fun the deck is to play against. While it does the artifact combo thing well, the payoff of creating a bunch of mirrors and turning them sideways is fun for me, and I'll definitely take that ability over Kenrith or Najeela any day. Some key budget cards to include would be Mirror Kinsmith, Brunaclad Telecore Engineer, Clock of Omens, Thoughtcast, and Mirror Battlesphere. Coming in at number 3 is Sidar Jabari of Zhalfir. Eminence was his ability first introduced as a keyword back in Commander 2017 and is one of the strongest abilities in Commander. Well, technically it was introduced in Commander 2014 with Oloro, but it wasn't keyworded yet, so I'm not counting that. Sidar Jabari has what I consider to be the most balanced Eminence ability of the bunch. His Eminence ability helps enable his second ability, so you actually have incentive to cast him and attack. And reanimating only knights is a flavorful restriction, since there aren't any knights that are as powerful as Atraxa Grand Unifier. If you really want to abuse the reanimation, you could include Arcane Adaptation, Maskwood Nexus, and Conspiracy to turn all your creatures into knights, allowing you to reanimate anything from your graveyard. The reason for his appearance at number 3 is I enjoy playing both with and against him. He feels like an incredibly balanced commander, with great benefits and payoffs using a creature type that isn't known to be explosive. Some key budget cards to include would be Knights of Dol Amrith, Hakan Stormgald Scourge, Murderous Rider, Herald of Hoofbeats, and Knight's Charge. Coming in at number 2 is Hidetsugu and Kairi. Hidetsugu and Kairi is what you get if you combine Garuda, Doom of Depths, and Yuriko, the Tiger's Shadow. Instead of using creature clones, this deck is chocked full of instants and sorceries to create clones of Hidetsugu, allowing you to fix the top of your library, deal massive damage to the table, and then cast a free clone spell on Hidetsugu to repeat this process. Even if you don't hit a clone spell, you can deal massive damage with cards like Commit to Memory. I found even budget versions of this deck tend to be explosive since clones and rituals aren't expensive, which is why they're number 2 on this list. Key budget cards to include would be Quasi-Duplicate, Cackling Counterpart, Sea Double, Stolen Identity, and Replication Technique. And coming in at number 1 is Thalia and the Gitrog Monster. Abzan is far and away my favorite 3-color combination in EDH. It takes Golgari and gives you a nice splash of white for removal, protection, and some stacks. Thalia and Gitrog have been incredibly impressive in Magic Online games, helping keep some of the most oppressive decks down. My deck is far from budget and is an homage to Abzan Control from 2015. I'm using the greatest hits from that era, such as Elspeth Sun's Champion, Siege Rhino, and Ugin the Spirit Dragon. They've earned their number 1 spot thanks to the versatility of this commander, and their ability to both be card advantage and a win condition from the command zone. You can build Hate Bears, lands, or even a Voltron deck thanks to their amazing keywords. I think Landfall is the best option on a budget, and I'd suggest you give it a try. Some key budget cards you should include would be Titania, Protector of Aragoth, Feldar Retreat, Tireless Tracker, Tireless Provisioner, and Entesh Restoration. And that wraps up my top 10 2023 commanders so far. Make sure to check out the poll in the video description below to vote on next week's Commander deck tech. And if you can give this video a like, it really helps out the channel. This has been Ben with Bathroom Brews MTG, and remember, always wash your hands.